You're listening to the Yeshiva of Newark at IDT podcast. I'm your host and curator, Rabbi Avraham Kivlevitz, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Clear the aisles, the Projectionist Has Semicha. Hi, I'm here with Kolakowski, and a topic we've sort of neglected, which is vintage TV. Yitzchak, why don't you start us off, and I'll react. Go ahead.
All right. Well, we're coming up to American Thanksgiving,
as opposed to Canadian Thanksgiving, which was last month.
Yeah. And we had a little program at the prison last night. We had 6 different chaplains and the warden. All we each gave said a little 5-minute mini sermon, something. We had 3 different Christian chaplains: Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox, and then we had a Native American chaplain. We had our pagan chaplain that we just hired, and myself. So it was, and I couldn't get through without quoting some kind of movie. I quoted The Incredible Shrinking Man, the soliloquy at the end there.
Oh boy, that film sends shivers up your spine.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that another time.
Yes.
I think maybe next week maybe we can discuss that.
Yes. The Incredible Shrinking Man is a Musser schmooze. That is.
It actually ends with a Musser schmooze. That's what
That's what I'm saying. The whole idea of really, it really is Kafkaesque to the extreme. And I actually read the book that it was based on after I saw the movie in Memphis when I was a little kid. And the book is quite weird, to tell you the truth, especially as he's shrinking. He tries to he tries to give himself some sort of companionship. If you remember, he has like this little doll that he's sort of connected to. Really is a very quite what happens when you shrink into nothing. Hear about the assemblage of chaplains that were involved in the Thanksgiving convocation. I guess you're sort of indicating, and this is not a halachic show or a Torah show, that Thanksgiving still retains somewhat of a religious nature, and that we need perhaps men of religion, men of the cloth like yourself and others, to sort of give a sense of how Thanksgiving can be more than just sitting around and stuffing yourself and watching football and getting drunk. So I guess that's really your point, that it needs to be somewhat of an uplifting experience. I guess I'm going to steal your thunder here and say that you were looking for some programs, either in vintage TV or whatever, that could somehow bring somewhat of the Thanksgiving message, right?
And so I found a Thanksgiving episode that didn't really have any kind of Thanksgiving message. It was really more talking, and I think it serves me to kind of commiserate. I myself will be at work. Episode that I did find, kind of speaks about that aspect of that life still goes on when most people have a day off. Not everybody gets a day off.
Right.
And so certainly, even if the chaplains in the prison technically might have the day off, I have reasons why. 1955, episode of Dragnet, which is a show that I grew up with watching on Nick at Night. I really grew up with Nick at Night. I think kind of more than almost anything else. That really other than maybe The Simpsons. And this, but the thing was the Nick at Night episodes were all from the 60s in color for the most part.
Right. But those are the episodes that I watched when I was growing up as a child. And I realized only later that Dragnet's pedigree actually stemmed back from the late 40s and early 50s, when the program was part of the sort of the incredible fascination post-World War II into police procedurals. And it was the rage to really find out. And I think part of what Jack Webb was trying to do, and this really explains why a Thanksgiving episode isn't an uplifting one, is because he wanted the program to be real and not gritty, but detailed. It's almost like this is an actual program, right? The story you're about to hear is true. That's the way every Dragnet episode starts. Meaning movies are fictionalized, television shows are fictionalized in order to give a certain dramatic punch where they don't necessarily exist. If you want to know what a policeman does during a day, well, part of it is chasing a lead that goes nowhere. Part of it might be finding someone who is actually a crook that we need to apprehend. But part of it is dealing with Mrs. McGillicuddy because her toaster got plugged in incorrectly, and or whatever. Or Mrs. Kravitz is worried about the fact that something strange is going on across the street, and I think that's part of what was the appeal of Dragnet, was that people didn't speak like they were on a stage. They spoke in a monotone, right? And that was part of why so many people used Dragnet to parody Dragnet. There's so many cartoons that I watched when I was growing up that were clearly parodies of Webb in other films where he didn't play this role. But this was a role that he crafted. This is a role that he was involved. A total production. It's a role that he loved. It's a role that he relished. I know he did.
I don't think even I realized until tonight watching this episode, I was and having grown up watching Dragnet, in reruns. Obviously, it was already 20, 30 years old when I was watching it then, and I don't think I paid that much attention to the credits to recognize that it was Jack Webb who produced and directed the show.
Yes, produced, directed, and also casted it, of course, in terms of as the producer. He did work together with the Los Angeles Police Department, and I know they were very happy about the positive ways that the program highlighted police. It wasn't like an internal affairs ugly investigation. It didn't have the darkness of film noir where the cop is on the take. And I think that's one of the reasons why it sort of was an outlier in some ways, because it didn't have that dramatic punch. But on the other hand, it was sort of, I guess, addictive as a program. And as you can see, it came back in the 60s. It actually had another iteration. We should get our friend Tom to discuss it with us, but it had another iteration as Adam 12, which was really, basically the same idea of Dragnet, but going to the police academy and having two young recruits. I think Marty Milner was in Adam 12. So that was also produced by Jack Webb. I don't know if you knew that, but that was sort of like his idea that he felt that Dragnet could be like a tree that could have branches. So this Thanksgiving episode, do you remember the title? Can you give us a short synopsis of what goes on?
The title is The Big Thanksgiving. And so this is still back from the 50s, which, again, like you said, the show had already been on, I guess, for 7 years. I think it started in 1948 on the radio, perhaps, or around that time. So it's, and how long lived the show was that it went on for 20 years or so. So this was when Webb, his Friday's partner was Officer Smith, was played by Ben Alexander, and he doesn't really play much of a part in this episode, but basically the story is that there's been a mugger who's been attacking women who are coming off of trains and streetcars, at night when there's not much foot traffic, and he has a gun, and he's been stealing purses, and really everything you just described was in this episode. The one thing that was that it just happened to, and it seemed like in real life this took place over Thanksgiving, and because there was a culprit that they were trying to catch, everyone had to be at work on Thanksgiving. No one was able to take the day off. So one of the things that they said was, to one of the officers, don't have your wife try to call to get you to get the day off. You're not getting the day off. You have to work over Thanksgiving, and that's just like doctors and
You
you know
sure?
or
Uh,
correctional officers and everyone else, and EMTs and certainly police have to go to work on Thanksgiving. They don't get that day off. Then that's just a slice of real life that really, and there's no Thanksgiving message. There's nothing, about, just, they happen to say Happy Thanksgiving. They're Friday and Smith are sitting in a diner eating, and Smith is commenting on how instead of serving turkey, they're serving rabbit at the diner for Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
which was kind of strange,
Right.
to me.
By the way, just to let everybody know, the titles of all the Dragnet programs were all the big something. That's the way, that's the way he had them. The big, whether you're talking about the big Thanksgiving, the big customer, the big rush, the big lift, the big rain. All of those are various of designating their programs, but
Because there really wasn't anything so big about Thanksgiving. It just happened to actually be over
right,
Thanksgiving.
right. It's
And
sort
the
of
same
tongue.
you saw that the waitress at the diner also had to be working Thanksgiving, and that they wished each other a happy Thanksgiving, and that was just about it. That was the extent of
So,
it being a Thanksgiving show.
right,
Wasn't
so
like the Cheers episode where they went away for dinner and dressed up like pilgrims and all that stuff.
yeah. Well, again, there's a sitcom that that feeds off of giving people what they want. People want to see a Thanksgiving episode. Again, that's part of what Dragnet was about. Was, hey, life is these little details. Again, I'll tell you just the people have talked about Joe Friday's partner. That's Jack Webb's character, Joe Friday. I don't know why I came up with the name Joe Friday. I'm not sure. I'm sure people know. And I know the badge, of course, was 714, which is the that was like the symbol of the program. And of course, everybody knows the theme music, which is probably ranks up there with I guess probably one of the most well-known theme music of perhaps any program. So it is again, Webb's choice of his partner in terms of the banter between them is, I guess, somewhat of the humor or the highlights of the episode. In the 60s, the shows you watched, the ones I saw when they were not reruns, you had Harry Morgan, who, of course, it was started up, of course, as a character actor in the 40s and 50s, usually playing either a dope or a pretty mean fellow. I think he probably
Played
enters
judges a lot, wasn't he? He was.
as he got older. I think he ended up, of course, in MASH he played, of course, the Colonel, and I think that's probably the program that he lasted the longest. Yeah, again, he did a show. Harry Morgan is a real, although he was in some films, he's a real creature of television.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think he played the judge in Inherit the Wind, didn't he?
he, I think, had a lot more acting skill than Jack Webb did. And
Yeah.
I remember when I watched the program, he seemed more like an animated real person. I don't know if Joe Friday ever really rose beyond an automaton. The other thing about Dragnet
the thing is, I know, one of the lieutenants in the prison who he's Joe Friday. He walks like he doesn't move his arms when he walks. He's like a robot. He's like
I understand. Again, put it this way, I think I could take one or two episodes. I definitely could not go on a Dragnet binge or
Right.
a cavalcade of Dragnet programs. I don't think you could watch more than one or two at a time.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's they definitely they definitely have a monotonous quality to them. And I think the part of the program that I sort of thought was the least natural was at the end of the program, if there was someone that was arrested, they would tell you what happened to this guy, right? They would say, Shmerel Kolakowski was sentenced to 4 years in the Los Angeles Penitentiary or something like that, or the California Penitentiary School. And then you would the camera would focus on the actor that was playing Shmerel Kolakowski, right? And then you'd see his face. Oh, they caught this guy, right?
Yeah.
which of course, come on. I mean, you're trying to have verite from this. I think part of it was, it's similar to another program that was very popular when I was growing up was called the FBI, which had a nice Jewish fellow in it, Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., of course, which was also
he became a born again Christian, didn't he?
Yeah, did he actually? Well, yeah, but it was a law and order program. Ephraim Zimbalist, by the way, was in Batman the animated series. He, of course, was the voice of Alfred in that series. He did a great job in that. Most of the voice acting in that cartoon was excellent. Really, really top of the line. And Ephraim Zimbalist, along with Mark Hamill, of course, as the Joker and others, it was like a really a wonderful.
Did the fellow play Batman just pass away?
Kevin Conroy.
Yeah.
Kevin Conroy was really also really something. They were all excellent. But I remember Ephraim Zimbalist's second life as a voice actor. But again, this was a time, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, when there was a strong streak of law and order. Jimmy Stewart made
this is certainly, I mean, by today's standards, this would be a patriotic show because the cops are the good guys. They're not.
Right. Yes,
100%. You don't have the dirty cops. You don't have the.
Yeah. Sticking with old.
They're not heavy drinkers. They're not. They're just doing their job, doing what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing that we mentioned before we move on is the fact that because it was ultra realistic, they were able to really deal with topics like women being assaulted, drug use. Even in the 60s, Dragnet dealt with marijuana issues and other things that other television programs sort of had to stay a little bit far away from. And I think because it was supposed to be somewhat like a documentary, subjects like that, even homosexuality and other things, really became. They were in Dragnet. They were on the table in ways that in regular sitcoms or other types of drama programs, the censors might have been a little bit leery of. But Dragnet was able to get away with it. So again, you couldn't.
This episode it had a little bit of that. Again, this was still from the 50s, but one of the aspects was, like you said, that all these false leads that they had around this case, that they picked up all these different people who still were criminals and still probably belonged in jail, but it wasn't the perp they were trying to catch. And this one woman who ran a motel, she said, you got to come over. We heard this story in the news, and you're looking for a guy who's stealing purses. There's one guy in the hotel here who has just a whole bunch of purses in his in his hotel room.
Right. So,
and then she mentioned this is a men's hotel. Women are not allowed to be guests here. Which I think was a comment that made reference to something that they couldn't really say what they were meaning, but
what they meant was that the man had homosexual tendencies or something like that. So
or that they don't allow women there because they're concerned that prostitution.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So let's move on. And Dragon, of course, can be found not only in you could find the old DVDs that perhaps have some of the old programs, but many of them I think are available for free on YouTube or maybe Tubi. Perhaps
this episode is because I think the episodes from the 50s probably are in the public domain already, and this one is on YouTube. And am I allowed to spoil what happened at the end, or are we not giving away?
I spoil every program.
He shot himself. He was trying to shoot himself out of getting caught, and he himself wound up not only killing the police officer but also himself being killed. So when they had at the end, instead of saying the time that he spent in prison, they said that they actually, the coroner had to have a court appearance to decide that this was a justifiable homicide on the side of the police officers, that the perp was trying to evade arrest. And meanwhile, the officer who killed him himself was killed, and Joe Friday is trying to give him chizik, telling him, I was once shot, and they only gave me a few hours off because it was just my skin was grazed, but you're going to get 6 weeks off, living the good life, staying home, because this is a pretty bad wound, but you'll get better, and they'll plug you up, and you'll be fine. And the cop winds up dropping dead after Friday is trying to give him this chizik of not only going to survive, and you're gonna enjoy a few nice weeks off because of this, and then when the one of the other officers says to Friday there, how sad it is that both of these men got killed, and he said no, only one man died. The other one was he was like
he didn't deserve. Friday feels he didn't deserve the appellation of a man. Okay, look, let's move from Dragnet, which is in the public domain. You could find, if not all of the episodes, to another program, which I think you can find on some of the streaming services. It's unfortunate that this television program, you cannot find all the episodes online or streaming. I'm not sure exactly why. It seems like there might be some issues with in terms of the producers. You could probably somehow search for all the old DVDs if you can. And this is the program Taxi. Now, the reason why I'm thinking about Taxi, first of all, it was a favorite of ours when my wife and I, when we would see the program in reruns. And even I think we might have seen some of the episodes when they were actually first run, although I'm not 100% sure if we did. But it was a program that had a chain to it. We talk about theme music. I think Taxi's theme music was unique in television at that time. I'll do a little bit of my own version of it. It seems like
they're going to be singing that nigga into the coil now.
Anyway, so I think that song was recorded as an independent song before it went to Taxi, but it's definitely the theme to Taxi, and it's I think it's a very, unlike a brass type of Peter Gunn or Patty Duke or even Gilligan's Island. It's like a show. This is a show that, similar to Dragnet in a way, that it might not go any place. It's a show about human beings. It's a show that might have a little moral. We're going to actually take you into a bunch of sad sacks, people who are having to drive a cab. None of them really sees themselves as a cab driver in essence, but they happen to have to find jobs like Uber drivers today. And you could probably get the same type of stories. It was obviously a cast of an ensemble cast. There were programs that featured one character over the other, and I think the Taxi in many ways heralded programs like Cheers, like Frasier, or Friends as well. Wings also. Taxi in a way. James Brooks, who of course was a Jewish fellow who developed the idea, and he developed it around Judd Hirsch. And that was part of the reason why I thought about Taxi, because Judd Hirsch is in the news again. He plays in Uncle Boris in the movie The Fabelmans, which is Steven Spielberg's latest production, which is meant to sort of very much an autobiographical version of himself, of a young fellow who comes from a broken home, who ends up who loves movies and things like that, and is encouraged by his great uncle Boris, who was played by Judd Hirsch in the film. Judd Hirsch is 87 years old now. He wasn't a young fellow when he was in Taxi, but he had a certain aplomb. He was very obviously a Jewish character. Carol Kane, of course, and Andy Kaufman, two other Jewish actors, were in that program, along with Ray Perlman was a guest star. She had a recurring role as Louis' girl. He really made his name. He started as actually just as a guest star in one of the programs, and you can relate to this, of course, because he played Reverend Jim Ignatowski also sort of a person giving out ordinations and preaching out of his drug-induced state. And then he became a regular Christopher Lloyd. Andy Kaufman, his connection to the program was quite interesting. And because officially he was only like a guest star, he didn't sign up to do every program. He was really, of course, making a name for himself as doing his unique type of stand-up craziness that you could still find clips of. But in many ways, he was really ultra talented and really even a bigger phenomena than almost anybody in the program. I think the program lasted around 5 years. I can't say that every single one of them was like, unlike I think Frasier, although I don't really like the program, I think the casting is almost perfect in Frasier in terms of what they were trying to get. Cheers, close. In Taxi, some of these actors or actresses don't really deserve to be part of an ensemble. Bobby Wheeler, but I would say, Tony Danza, of course, ended up having a pretty long career in sitcoms after that, and Who's the Boss? Mary Lou Henner, a little bit of cheesecake for people, but she's actually quite an intelligent woman. She has a photographic memory. I don't know if you know that. She's one of the few people that has been shown to have photographic memory. And I think it's probably, Taxi, probably the best thing she ever did. And Judd Hirsch, I think, sort of was the anchor of the program, playing Alex Rieger, a Jewish fellow who has been married, has a child, is somehow the philosopher in some ways that everybody comes to with their problems. He's the characters revolve around Alex, but Alex is in many ways as befuddled as any of them. And it's not like Bob Newhart, where he's sort of like poking fun at all the grotesques. In many ways, he's part of it. And I think Judd Hirsch reins himself in, because he has a tendency, as he showed in Independence Day, to be quite a hammy actor when he wants to be. I think here in Taxi, he really allows others to shine. I'm not sure if he was an executive producer or not, but I know that he was the big name. And then, they built the others around them. Obviously, Danny DeVito and Christopher Lloyd had both been in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Milos Forman's incredible adaptation of Ken Kesey's novel that, of course, had Jack Nicholson and Chief Dan George in it. But both of them, Christopher Lloyd and Danny DeVito, played inmates in the insane asylum that of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So both of them play these sort of, if not, figures that are definitely what we would call unique and idiosyncratic, and as in Taxi. There's actually, and I think Danny DeVito probably comes out of this Taxi, of course. Andy Kaufman, I think, the biggest star. He's able to write his own ticket. He Throw Mama from the Train, other films afterwards. But I think, as a thoroughly disgusting character, Louis De Palma, a thoroughly disgusting, like, a person. But again, you somehow feel for him. You feel for him because of his height, the fact that he's obviously so short of stature. And you can even understand how grimy and how perverted he is at times. And I should also mention, by the way, that Louis' best friend, other than Ignatowski, Christopher Lloyd, he obviously pushes Andy Kaufman playing Lotka around, but he also has an African American fellow who's in the cage with him, Jeff. And again, as far as a film that really didn't make much of the fact that he was black, but clearly showed that you can have a relationship. There was a friendship there. It was, in a way, I think, I'm not saying that it cut any new ground in terms of television sitcoms or drama, but it was a very nice little aspect. And the fact was that Louis was in a way, cordial to his co-worker there, the black fellow, in ways that I think sent the positive message in terms of race relations. I mean, African Americans have constantly bemoaned the fact that in this era of glorious American sitcoms, they didn't exist, right? Friends only tried to take a black character in very late into its run. And you go to these programs like Cheers, or any of these programs, where's the black characters? And I think, you hear that voice from many, Jordan Peele, Spike Lee, and the others. There was a black character in Taxi. It wasn't one of the major characters, but it was a recurring role. And I think that in many ways it was a positive program as far as that goes. So I would tell our listeners, if you can, I think it's a program that's not going to give you a lot of belly laughs, but I think it's a program that's going to give you a certain sense of, it'll satiate your desire for seeing a little artifice than Dragnet. But in many ways, it shares some of the same aspects. It doesn't need to necessarily end in some big moral message. It doesn't need to have a certain dramatic arc. And in that way, I think that it represents a way to view something as an escape, but also as a way to comment on our lives, things that are people struggling. I mean, all the characters in Taxi are all hoping to be something else, as I mentioned earlier. And I think the program does a good job of indicating that many times, as we are engaged in the struggle to find ourselves, we turn to the people around us who are in the same boat, and we can get strength from them. And maybe that's a pretty good Thanksgiving message as well, wherever you are out there on this Thursday. Maybe not with the people that you would hope to be. Maybe they're in a different country. Maybe there's friction that stops you from really engaging the way you'd like to. But the people you are involved in, whatever type of job, whatever type of work you're doing, you can find some commonality there. And you're able to find maybe some humor, some pathos, and some ways that we can somehow be part of, recognize that wonderful gift that God gave us, the sociability factor that we have as human beings. And we can be thankful for the fact that other human beings can reflect positively on us and give us a sense of encouragement towards perhaps the next step of where we're going to go. So that's it, my friends. Watch your step on the way out. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Be well.
Thanks for joining us for another episode from the Yeshiva of Newark at IDT Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a single episode.